welcome to today's video where we're going to be talking about how and when community can actually make things worse. Okay, so in this video we're going to be talking about why we do want to focus on building community, on becoming a community mindset kind of thinker person, why we absolutely want to start to move away from our hyper individualist culture that is constantly driving us to isolate ourselves, to do everything on our own, to say that personal responsibility is the one and only thing that exists. The spirituality world that's telling us that we are completely in control of our destinies and completely in control of our lives, and if we make all of the right choices, and if we're doing all the right spiritual things, and if we manifest in the correct way and all this stuff, that we can have the most perfect reality. We want to move away from that, okay? So this talk is not about trying to say that hyper individualism is the thing. It's the thing that we want. It is not, okay? However, we do want to be careful about community and about what can happen in community that actually serves to drive us away from reality, that serves to drive us away from actually fixing and solving the problems in reality and in society and in our hyper-individualistic culture that we are trying to solve, and that can actually take us away from figuring out our true selves and what is authentic for us and what is best for us, and why sometimes going it alone and learning how to be more independent and learning how to be more individualistic is actually better for the community, if we want to think of it like that, in the long run, than staying in whatever community we're in, okay? So we're going to talk about Stephen Hassan's BITE model today. So if you don't know him, if you watch this on YouTube or if you watch the replay on Facebook or anywhere, I will put the links in the description so that you can go look at his model. And again, I'm not saying that I agree with everything this person says. I'm not saying that I agree with all of his takes on reality, but he has a really good model of how we can look at coercive groups and how they can be unhealthy, because he does a lot of his study on cults. And so this is not to say that every harmful group or every kind of community that we can be in is a cult, but it is to say that we can look for the harmful parts of like what makes a cult bad, what makes a cult harmful, and we can apply that to our own lives as a kind of way of screening if the relationships that we're in are veering into unhealthy territory, okay? Because we live in a world right now that, again, his name is Stephen Hassan. If you go to freedomofmind.com, that's his website, freedomofmind.com. And then, yeah, you can learn a lot about cults and stuff like that from him. Yeah, he's got a lot of really good information. I highly recommend just looking at his cult study stuff. Yeah, because, again, we are living in a world right now that is so heavily polarized. And we are also living in a world right now where, especially because of the way social media works and the way that algorithms work, we are increasingly, and I mean, I don't even know if I want to say that we're increasingly doing this, because I kind of feel like this has been a tendency of human nature for a very, very, very long time, to find in-groups and to isolate ourselves within that in-group. And I think that social media and the way that algorithms are working and how we're getting more and more into echo chambers and extreme groups where you have to have extreme levels of thinking, and there's like very strict codes of conduct that we have to live by. This is nothing new, right? Like, humanity has been creating groups like this and has been creating social structures like this forever. And this is why I want to say, right, like, especially with my mystery school, I am so careful, like so careful and mindful that I am never in there to tell anyone how to live their life, right? I am not there to tell you how to think, how to feel, how to behave. It is not my job to tell you what your life should look like. And that is a huge part of how we avoid the cultish dynamics that tend to happen within a lot of the groups that we are creating today in the world. Okay? Because I believe that part of the reason why we tend to create these cult-like groups, why communities so often turn into unhealthy, toxic communities, is because so much of the time humans are joining groups. We are looking to be together, not only because we are humans that crave connection, and that is just like a fundamental part of our nature, but we are also looking for people, and we are looking for answers, people who have answers to life's big problems, right? A huge part of the reason that a lot of us find ourselves in unhealthy community, whether that unhealthy community be a one-on-one relationship we have with somebody, a romantic relationship that's toxic or unhealthy or leading into the abusive territory, why we end up in friend groups that are toxic, why we end up in like political groups, religious groups, spiritual groups, wellness groups, all of these things that tend to veer into the territory of not actually being healthy or good for us or the people in the group, is because we are fundamentally innocent and we are looking for someone or something to give us hope that we are going to feel better, that we can make life feel better. Most of the time we are going into these groups because we don't feel good how we are. We don't have a fundamental base sense of enoughness, of good enoughness, of being worthy, of being kind of capable of figuring things out on our own. And when we do have that, right? When we have a base sense of self-esteem and a base sense of, I feel pretty okay with how I'm perceiving reality, and I have my problems and I have my struggles, but I feel confident in my capacity to navigate and figure things out. I'm not looking for the answer. I'm not looking for a savior. I'm not looking for the thing that's going to rescue me from my pain. We are way less likely to end up in toxic relationship dynamics. And understanding that if we are not feeling like that, if we don't feel self-assured, if we don't feel capable of problem solving, if we don't feel like we can find the answers on our own, that's not our fault. That's not a choice we're making most of the time. That's not a fatal flaw in us. That's part and parcel of how we are raised in our culture, right? Like, we know that the systems that we function under, the economy that we have, thrives on a people group who feel inadequate, a people group who feel incapable, and a people group who feel like they aren't good enough, in order that we will be easily manipulated into consuming and producing beyond what is actually healthy, into participating in these systems where we are constantly being taken advantage of, or where we are taught to take advantage without even necessarily realizing that's what we're doing. That's how we stay in these systems. So we are living in a world right now where we are essentially set up to be in unhealthy community with other people because of the way we are conditioned to socialize, because of the way we are conditioned to think about ourselves and to think about the world. right? So this is a complex conversation, and it won't be the only one that I have about this, but I wanted to start the conversation today. I wanted to start us thinking about this today so that we can continue to explore this topic and look more deeply into it. And like I say, we can take it apart a little bit more and look at smaller portions of it later in future videos. Because again, learning how to love ourselves enough, learning how to have enough self-esteem that we are not susceptible to unhealthy community, and where we are ready and willing to defect from the community or to leave to actually leave if we need to, where we are confident enough that even if we have to go it alone for a little while, even if we have to learn to figure things out on our own, that we can do it, is the healthiest way to enter into a community, is the healthiest way to be in community. And so again, that's why I say, that's why I do this self-love work. That is why I think that self-love is the foundation for health and actual wellness in every sense of the word. Because when we have that base sense of knowing that we're fundamentally good enough and that we're fundamentally okay, we are not going to be so vulnerable to groups that enlist the unhealthy community tactics that they do in order to just create a power structure, essentially, because we will have, again, that foundation that says, red flag, this doesn't work, right? So like I say, this is why in the mystery school, you're not going to come into the mystery school and you are not going to go through a program in the mystery school and see a meal plan. You are not going to go through the mystery school and see, this is how you should be doing your spiritual practice. This is what you should believe in. This is how you should do your, thinking work. These are the kinds of jobs you should have. This is how you should think. This is how you should think about this thing. This is how you should think about that thing. You are never going to see that, because I am not here to tell you what your life should look like. And I think, again, this is the juxtaposition of what true healthy wellness culture is versus what it has become, is that I am here to give you base tools to help you connect to reality so you can figure out what your life is going to look like on your own, right? What it looks like, how you eat, how you speak to people, the kind of work you do in the world, the kinds of political ideologies you end up at, all of how it looks on the surface, like how your life looks on the surface. I am never going to tell you what that should be, because that is the end result of you connecting with reality, figuring out what is true for you right now, figuring out what actually feels good for you right now, what serves you right now, and what serves community right now, what serves the collective right now, and doing that. So I can't tell you how that is going to look on you, because it's going to look different for all of us. And it's going to look different for all of us at different times, right? Like, I would never sit up here and be like, hey, I left the Western world and moved to Asia, and so everyone should leave the Western world and move to Asia. I'm a relative minimalist, so I'm not a really good representation of a minimalist. Like, I have way less things than most people that I know, but at the same time, I probably have way more things than a lot of other people. But there's nothing to say that everyone should do that. I meditate for an hour a day, but that doesn't mean that everybody should. That doesn't mean that everyone has access to that. That doesn't mean that that's the right way or that is how it should be. And I find a lot of people in my community sometimes do get frustrated with the lack of direct direction of what they should do. Because again, my whole thing is I want to give you tools so that you can figure that out. So that you can figure out what feels good. And again, that we're leaving the realm of how it looks, and we're entering the realm of how does it feel? What are the actual outcomes, right? When people are like, should I do this or should I do that? And I'm like, okay, well, what are the results? How does this feel versus how that feels? What is the outcome of doing this versus the outcome of doing that? Do you want to combine pieces of these two things? Do you want to take pieces from these two things and put them together and leave some of the other pieces out? That's empowerment. And that is a community where you are free to actually be yourself, right? You do not have to look any certain way. You don't have to eat any certain way. You don't have to think any certain way in order to be a part of the mystery school. Yeah? Because that's not the point. I'm not here to control who you become or what your life looks like. And so when we can understand that that is not actually what we want, we don't want a community that tells us what to do. As much as that might feel good on the surface and good at first, that in real reality, what we want is a connection to a community that is there for us while we learn to figure things out. Yeah? Like a healthy community is going to be a group or a collection of people who are there for you as you learn to figure things out, and who are not there for you only when you live up to the external expectation of what the group says you have to look like and you have to be like and you have to act like. Right? When we are constantly feeling like we have to perform on some level, that's when we know we're in an unhealthy community. When it's, I can come how I am, be received how I am, and be supported in figuring out where I am and what my next steps are, that's a healthy community. So to put it in context at the very beginning of this video, if you're looking for what is a healthy community, can you show up how you actually are and be supported in figuring out what your next steps are? Or do you have to perform? Do you have to live up to some sort of standard? Is there a way in which you have to look, speak, behave? And if you don't do that, you get ostracized, you get criticized. First and foremost, that's how that's the kind of base. Are we in a healthy community or not? Okay? And so again, the thing that makes us vulnerable to toxic communities is feeling like we're desperate for answers and we're desperate for connection to the point where we will abandon ourselves in order to get it. And like I say, the fact that most of us are raised in a culture where we are perpetually told that we are incapable of figuring things out, where we are perpetually told that we are inadequate, that we are not good enough, that we aren't doing enough, we aren't producing enough, we aren't smart enough, we aren't attractive enough, we aren't well enough. And then these groups tend to feed on that even more. So many of the unhealthy communities that we're going to talk about today feed deeper into that idea. You're right, you are broken, you are messed up, there is something wrong with you. But don't worry, because if you follow the protocol properly, if you follow the group properly, if you speak the speak and walk the walk and look the look, you're going to get all these amazing results. And then if you're not getting the amazing results, it's because you're not doing it good enough. That's always going to be the kind of ethos of an unhealthy community. Perfect results are promised if you follow protocol perfectly. You have to follow a protocol perfectly. And if you don't get results, you are blamed. You are shamed. And then if you don't follow protocol perfectly, you are ostracized. You are criticized. You are judged. This is when we're entering into unhealthy community. Okay. And then again, last thing. When we build within ourselves the capacity to understand that there are going to be times and places in our lives where it is healthier for us to go alone, for us to leave the group, for us to defect from how everyone around us is doing things, and where finding reality and finding truth and finding what works for us is going to require that we say the group is wrong, that this isn't working for me, that this protocol or how I am doing things or how I'm being told I need to do things isn't actually giving me the outcomes that I'm being promised I'm supposed to get. And being strong enough in yourself to say, okay, I'm gonna and maybe you don't need to leave the group completely. You don't need to completely exit. But I'm not going to follow it verbatim. And I'm gonna learn to trust myself. And I'm gonna learn to trust reality and trust outcome more than I trust the group. Yeah? That's one of the most important things we will ever do. And there are very few groups out there that actually support that, right? We are going to find that there are so many groups out there, political groups, wellness groups, so-called activist groups, that the barrier for entry is so high, and the kind of performance element is so big that we aren't allowed to question or to experiment or to do anything that might be different from the group without being shamed and judged and ridiculed and ostracized. And that fear of I'm gonna lose connection being perpetually, piled on top of us. And that's part of what makes it so unhealthy. Yes, that we're constantly being made to doubt ourselves and to abdicate our feeling and our experience and what we're actually going through for what the group says. Okay, so, I really want to point out things like we, again, are living in a time where things are incredibly polarized. And we are living in a time where we have a lot of issues. We have a lot of problems in society. And there are a lot of people who are struggling and suffering in society literally because of the way society is set up, right? We know that our hyper-individualist wellness culture that's all about fitting your body and fitting your mind and fitting your social media into this idyllic pastel life where you wake up and you have your lemon water and you have your morning routine and you do your journaling and you eat your perfectly clean diet and you do your weightlifting because now being strong is popular, and you see you have the perfect skincare routine and your hair is thick and beautiful. And this culture is promising us that if we do all these right things and we make all these right choices, that we can avoid disease, that we can avoid any future health issues, that we can get clout, we can get people's approval, we can get likes on social media, we can get that dopamine hit of connection. And so much of this is rising as a result of the fact that we're living in a culture where we have very little real, true, authentic connection, right? So much of why we get sucked into the wellness spirituality world especially, and I'm going to speak to that because I feel like the people who watch my content, those are the groups we're in, right? We're in the spirituality groups, we're in the wellness groups, we're in the healing groups, we're in all of these things. And we're there, again, because number one, we're looking for answers. We don't feel satisfied, right? We're living in a culture that directly disconnects us from our humanity from the day we are born. We are trained not to listen to our emotions. We are trained to fear and reject and to try and control our bodies. We are trained to believe that we are never good enough, that we are not worthy, that we aren't living up to standard, like constantly. And then even when we try to say, you know what, fuck culture. Culture is stupid, right? I don't want to work a corporate job. I don't want to eat a normal diet. I want to learn to be spiritual and all of these things. And we think that we're leaving that system. We really believe we're leaving the system. We really believe we're leaving that way of being. And we enter into the spirituality and the wellness world. What most of us are going to find is that we are entering normal culture just dressed in feathers and mallet beads. That the underlying thinking that there's a way, that there's a right way, that you are fundamentally lacking and unworthy on some level, and that if you just do the right things, if you look the right way, you do the right practices, you consume the right things, you become a life coach and you become a spiritual guide and you become all these spiritual things and you wear all the clothes that you're supposed to wear and you learn the language, that you will then transcend and you're going to feel good and you're going to leave the toxic system and you're going to become your highest self and you're going to be enlightened and you're going to be taken away from all of it. And that's attractive, of course, because it sounds like we have found the solution to our problem, right? Like we understand that culture is shitty and that the way we think and the way we live in culture doesn't work. And we think we're finding an alternative, when in fact we're just now following a different looking script that is the exact same thing. And we know because, again, we can't show up how we actually are. We're not there to actually feel our real emotions. We can't question protocol. We can't allow ourselves to doubt and to be different and to let our lives look how they're going to look, because there's a very specific way we're supposed to be. And there are very specific rules of what we're supposed to do. You see? And so we get sucked into this because, again, there's that level of pseudo connection that when we are doing it right and when we can make it look like we're doing all the things, we get approval from the group. And even if we're not getting approval from the group, it can feel like we're getting approval from the teacher or the guide or whoever is the authority figure, because we're doing it right. And so there's that sense. There's the sense of I'm not alone anymore, right? These people all see it the way I see it. We see it all in the same way. And so I can trust them. I can trust their judgment. I can follow them because they see it and we're all together against this thing. Right? There's all that feeling. And then the most dangerous part of it is it's the when I don't know what to do, when I don't feel like I have the answer, when I feel lost, when I feel confused, I can just defer to the group. And the group will tell me the rules, right? The group, I can look at the book, I can read the book, I can read the manual, I can follow the guru, I can follow the group. The teacher will tell me what to do. And even if it's not working, and even if I've tried it a million different times, and it hasn't given me the results that I'm told I'm supposed to get, I can be convinced that it's just because I did it wrong, or I didn't do it for long enough, or I wasn't, I didn't do it properly. And so just do it more and do it again. And again, this is kind of how we get upsold in these groups a lot of the time. Of you just need to go to the next level, you just need to buy into the next thing, you just need to do the next thing. Because there's this constant, if you're not getting results, well then it must just be that you're not doing it enough, instead of maybe this isn't the thing for you, right? This is why, again, in the mystery school, there's one level. You enter, there's the mystery school, you get all of the things, and if at any point you want to leave, you leave. And that's it, because there aren't levels. You will work your way through the curriculum and all of that, but you go at your own pace, and however it looks for you is how it looks for you. And there's no judgment about that in the group, because there shouldn't be. In a healthy community, you are going to look how you are going to look. You are going to do the practices that fit where you are for your life. So again, like for me to sit up here and say, I meditate for an hour every day, so everyone should meditate for an hour every day. Okay, if you're a single mom who's working 2 jobs and you have to take, public transport to get everywhere, and then you got to get your kids all together, and then you pick them up, and then you got to take them to their activities, and you don't have time to meditate for an hour a day. That's never going to be a thing that's reasonable for you. So for me to say the thing that's going to matter for you to feel good is doing this thing that I do is completely ridiculous. That is never going to work for you. However, how do we figure out how to get you 5 minutes of mindfulness while you're on the bus? That would be something that matches where you are. So your meditation looks totally different than mine, because what serves you right now is totally different than what serves me right now. And the point is to help you figure out what serves you so that you can then feel better and then go out into the world and have the effect that you're going to have. Right? You are not supposed to then turn into someone who makes lives just because I do it. That's what my end result of this is. But I would never say everyone should be doing this. Like, I've heard people say, like, oh, you're following this diet, start an Instagram about it. And I'm like, no, you don't. Unless you really actually super want to do that. Just because the person you're following is doing that doesn't mean you should do that. Doesn't mean that that's healthy for you. You see what I'm saying? Okay. So let's look at the bite model. Okay? Because again, especially in our political wellness, because again, like the wellness spirituality world also leads into a lot of the time, not always, but a lot of the time, left-leaning political ideologies, left-leaning ways of thinking. And this is where I feel like we tend to find a lot of the unhealthy community dynamics that many of us maybe don't recognize. Okay? There's so much purity testing. So much purity testing in the health and wellness world. And the leftist ideologies and the kind of like the people who say that they want liberation. The people who say that they are fighting for a freer, better world are so often perpetuating unhealthy, unwell systems without realizing that they're doing it, right? We're so obsessed with how we think it should look and how people should talk and how people should do things. If you're really part of the group, if you're really one of us, you're going to think like us, you're going to act like us, you're going to move like us. And if you don't, right, with increasing levels of purity testing, you get publicly shamed or you get cut out completely. And this is part of what I think is holding us back from actually creating positive change on the planet, is that all the people who are seeing that the systems don't work, or not all of the people, a lot of the time, we are living in a world where people who are seeing that the systems don't work are not willing to actually do the work that we need to do as humanity, to reconnect to our humanity, and to realize that we are all different and that we are all going to live different lifestyles and we're all going to have slightly different perspectives, and that us learning how to work together with our differences to create a more actually tolerant world is the answer. We're not really willing to do that. We just want to rush to, I think I have the right idea. And if we all do this, if we all politically do this thing, if we all use our Instagram and use our social media for this cause, if we all, meditate in this way and eat in this way and live in this way, we're going to solve the world's problems. And anyone who isn't doing that is shitty. Anyone who isn't doing that doesn't get it. They're not woke. They're not enlightened. And they should be publicly shamed, and they should be publicly guilted, and they should be publicly excommunicated. Right? So even if we're not formally in any kind of group, but we're finding ourselves whoa, I can't interact with this kind of group of people without constantly feeling like I have to moderate myself and what I'm saying, and am I saying it in the right way, and am I doing it in the right way, right? There's a line between being actually respectful, right? So much of the using people's proper pronouns and gendering people properly and having respect, that yes, we absolutely should be doing that 100%. I don't really see that as any different as someone being okay, well, this is my name, right? This is my name, please call me by my name. And you being okay, so you told me your name is Joe, yeah, well, I think I'm gonna call you Charles. It's that would be weird. And we can see in culture that would be weird. But then when someone says, hey, I prefer to be they, them, and people are no, I'm not gonna do that, it's kind of well, why is that acceptable, right? Anyways, we don't need to get into that right now. The point is, there are certain things that, again, that are structurally and practically speaking, just respectful, helpful things. And then there's purity testing to the point of and now you got to do this, and now you got to do this, and now you got to post on social media this, and then you have to say this, and if you're not saying this, and if you're not doing this, and if you're not being this, you're not part of the group. You're not good enough. You're not doing it. If you don't believe exactly what we believe to the most extreme degree, you don't get to participate. And we're cutting our noses off to spite our faces. We're not realizing that we are not going to cause change by continually looking for perfection and axing anyone that we feel is not living up to that perfection. You see, our numbers are already so low of people who want to change the system and who see things differently, that if we keep getting rid of people because they're not perfectly perfect, we're not getting anywhere. And we're making it look very unattractive. And we're not, and the shaming doesn't actually help people change. As much as we feel justified in looking at people who are causing harm and who have incorrect ideas according to us, and we say you're an awful person, you're doing awful things, and you don't deserve respect, and you don't deserve, kindness or any kind of understanding. We can feel justified in that, and we probably are justified in that. But at the end of the day, again, we're not going to get the results we want. People aren't going to change by being shamed within the group or outside of the group. Okay, but that's how these groups work. That's how an unhealthy community works. That it's all purity testing, and it's all shaming and blaming and guilting, and it's all having to abandon yourself in order to fit into and be in alignment with the right way. And again, we're susceptible to it because there's a part of us that wants the right way. We want those answers. We want someone to tell us what to do when we are confused. We want the world to be a better place, so we're entering into it innocently. We're entering into that spiritual community innocently. We're entering into the wellness culture innocently. We're entering into the political, world because we want to see something better. And we don't know how to do it. And we're looking for the people who do. But then again, it moves into the territory of the people who quote unquote do are all about making it about what it looks like on the surface and not what it actually is. Okay, so when we're in unhealthy community, the characteristics of the BITE model from Stephen Hassett, we're just going to look at it right now. Number 1 is behavior control. Okay? Is there a huge emphasis on this is the correct diet and you have to eat like this? And there's constant purity testing in that. This is the correct way to be spiritual. These are the practices you have to do. These are the clothes you have to wear. This is the speech you have to have. This is the correct way to be politically active. This is how you should use your social media. This is how you should use your voice. These are the things you have to be doing and not doing. And if you are not doing the things you should be doing, and if you are doing the things you shouldn't be doing, there's judgment, criticism, there's excommunication, there's you don't get to be part of the group, there's shaming. There's no room for different behavior. Okay? So that's the first thing. And this, again, can happen within a one-on-one relationship. Someone can be very interested in controlling your behavior as a way of making you feel dependent upon them, as a way of making you feel like you can't figure things out without them, like there's an act you have to put on, so that you're constantly abandoning yourself for the relationship. That's unhealthy. Okay? Second thing is information control. And this is really difficult and challenging in our world today, where again, our algorithms, and I think this is something that I really want to speak to today, is that we need to understand that we might think we are taking in the news. We are taking in the information about the thing that's happening on the planet right now. That we're taking in the correct information about health and wellness and spirituality. Because that's what's on our feed over and over and over and over and over again. We are just getting more and more and more posts and people and ideas that lean into that thing that we're already into. And the only opposing views we see are people criticizing those opposing views, are ways of deconstructing and saying how those opposing views are bad and wrong and not correct. And we think, I must be seeing reality correctly because look, like it's my whole news feed. We all believe this. And we're not realizing, it's like, no. That's just because your algorithm is interested in keeping you engaged. And these are the things you click on. These are the things you will watch. So they feed you more and more and more of that stuff. It doesn't mean that it's the truth. It doesn't mean that it's an unbiased opinion. It doesn't mean that the other side is totally wrong and here are all the reasons. And a lot of the time, we're not actually even seeing what the other side is seeing. We think we're seeing what the other side is seeing and being like, see, this is so obviously stupid. Because again, we're only seeing it through the filter of our perception being correct. So when we are in groups, of course, that tell us don't read these kinds of books, don't listen to this kind of news, don't look at these kind of people, only listen to people who believe what you believe, who support what you have as a worldview. Cut out anyone and any information that goes against what we believe. That's a red flag. Okay, so again, before we commit, or, all of us are going to have our biases. All of us are going to have our biases, and that is how it works. Which means that we are going to be biased towards certain kinds of information, which means that our feed is just going to feed us more and more and more of that information. We have to be strong enough and willing to search out alternative opinions and to give them a good shot. To actually try to understand why someone might think that way and feel that way. If we really want to be positive change on the planet, we are not going to get there by being in our echo chamber and just learning more and more about how wrong the other side is, how wrong everyone else is, how everyone who doesn't do what we do is unenlightened and not as good as us and silly and stupid. That is never going to change the world. That's never going to make anything better. Even if we want to help other people, like even if we look at the other side and find that there truly are flaws in the ways that they are thinking and living and harm, we aren't going to get them to change by telling them that. We have to be able to level with where people actually are and how they were raised and what their experience has been and how they got to where they are, and have compassion for that so that we can show them that there are other better ways, but that it has nothing to do with them as a person. Right? Like, we are so good at villainizing people instead of villainizing ideas. And this is a huge problem. We are not going to change the world by villainizing people and making people feel like they are shitty for having wrong ideas. Okay, so information control. Are you willing to step outside of your bubble and to actually pursue information from other perspectives? And to give them at least a why might people believe this? Not to say that it's good, not to justify it, not to say that we want to make it okay. That, right? There are very, very, very harmful ideas out there, but we still need to understand how people get there and see that it's not people that are horrible. It's the whole culture they live in and how they were raised and all the things that slowly frog in hot water lead them to that place, that we can then lead them somewhere else. Okay? Number 3 is thought control. So again, so much of the time, especially in wellness and spirituality, there's so much. This is how you have to think. You need to be in control of your mind. And you need to be having these very specific beliefs and very specific ways of thinking about yourself and about the world, that it gets really dangerous. That you aren't allowed to have independent thought that doesn't align with the group. And ask questions and be doubtful. And maybe have parts of the rhetoric that you don't believe in, that you don't participate in, that you have critically thought about and be like, well, for me at this point, that's not an idea that resonates. I don't see that playing out in real reality. Doesn't seem to be how it works. If you can't have that freedom of, okay, I agree with 90% of what you say, but 10%, these are the thoughts that I have that are different. If you can't have that, you're in an unhealthy community. Okay, and the last one is emotion. So this is the big one. The way that we are mostly kept in harmful communities is that fear of ostracization, right? We get the love bombing when we're doing it right. We get the approval, we get the approval of the leaders, we get the approval of the group. And when we're not doing it right, there's so much fear. And so much of it revolves around, I'm going to lose my community. I'm going to lose my friends. I'm going to lose my connection. And that is the most horrifying feeling, because we don't want to be alone, and we don't want to feel like we're going to lose our source of answers. So this is why, again, the self-love path is so important for finding actual truth and actual healthy community. We need to be able to say, it's okay to go alone sometimes. It's okay. I can figure things out. I have tools for problem solving. I can take from this group, and I can take from that group, and I can take from this ideology and all of these things that work without having to whole hog join anything. Because it's not about finding the perfect group. It's about finding good information. And there are groups out there that have good information and shitty information. And can I be the kind of person who's strong enough to take the good stuff, but not then have to swallow all the shitty stuff? Right? Like, you'll notice that, like, I don't really follow anybody. I'm not part of any group. Because at the end of the day, I've not yet found a group that has it all figured out. And I'm not trying to create that group either. I don't want you to be the kind of person who only follows me. I don't want the mystery school to be the only thing you do, the only voice you listen to. I would never want that, because I do not have all the answers. I have some tools and some techniques that work for people at a specific point on their path. And I know that people are going to move on from my content and find different things and integrate different things and all that stuff. And that's what we want. That is what is actually going to create change on the planet, is when we actually learn how to cooperate through figuring out what the things that other people out there have that do work, and being able to create like a way of being where all of those things can be included, even when they're different from each other, and where we can understand that we're all at different places and we're all at different levels, and we all have different skills and things that we have to offer. And so, like, our lifestyle and what works for us in terms of us being the least harmful we're going to be and the most in alignment with what's good for us and what's good for humanity is going to look different for all of us. Right? Like, some of us are homesteading, and that's how we're leaving culture. Some of us live in culture and are just like way minimalist about it. Some of us work corporate jobs. Some of us are life coaches, and no one is doing it wrong. So long as you're figuring out where you are, what works for you, within the context of the very, confusing reality we live in. And understanding that no one has it all figured out. No one group has all the answers. There is no such thing as the enlightened individual who knows everything for your health or your spirituality, for everyone's health and spirituality, and if we just followed this person, we're going to get there. It does not exist. That religion doesn't exist. That diet doesn't exist. That spiritual technique doesn't exist. That political group doesn't exist. There is no perfect out there. There is no has all the answers. It's not there. And the second thing is to understand that we can be okay even if we're not being approved of. And it is better to follow real reality and to be misunderstood and to be cut out of the group than it is to follow along with something that's out of integrity. And as hard as that is why we do this work. Because we don't want to be the kind of people that's, right? Like, when our intention is to feel better and to make the world a better place, because I feel like that is why you're here. That's why you're listening to these videos. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make the world a better place. You want to So if we're abandoning what's feeling good, what's actually working, so that we can keep fitting into a group, we're not meeting that end. Is it actually working? And if it isn't, it's defeating the purpose. We have to be willing to critically think about every group we're in. And again, the levels at which there is no compassion and there's no room for people to be different and to have different ideas and to still be included in the community is the degree to which we're in an unhealthy community. When there isn't room for you to at least question, like even if you question, then come back and say, yeah, I realized you guys are right. If there's not room for you to do that and still be loved and accepted, that's not a healthy community. If it's all based on shaming in order to try to get people to change, that is not a healthy community. And it is better to be alone, in my opinion, and to learn how to resource ourselves and to learn how to see reality for ourselves than it is to be involved in unhealthy community that asks us to abandon reality and abandon ourselves for the sake of the group. Does this make sense? And I really wanted to talk about this today because, again, that I truly believe that community is a huge part of our humanity. Learning how to live together and cooperate is a big part of changing the systems. But if we can't do it in a way where we're not just creating new rules that everyone has to follow, and if you don't follow them perfectly, you get cut out, we're not going to move towards that. Constant purity testing, constant this is the right way and everything else is wrong and stupid, constant shaming, constant behavior control, and you can't question anything and you can't be different. And if you look different, or you sound different, or you go about things in a different way, means you don't get to participate. We're not creating a better world doing that. We're not creating the change we want to see, as justified as we might feel. We're doing that for ourselves. We're not doing that for a better world. And we have to be able to see that and recognize that and realize that change is going to be a lot slower than we want it to be. And that being supportive and making room for different ideas is the way that we're going to move forward. That's the only way we're going to create healthy communities. Okay? It's not about how it looks on the surface. It's about how it is and what's working and why people are the way they are, and having compassion for that and seeing how we can work together to create something more harmonious versus just I have this idea of what is the right thing and we all have to do that now, otherwise fuck you. Right? Okay. Any final thoughts or questions? This is why self-love is so important. We have to be willing to say, I'm not going to sacrifice reality. I'm not going to sacrifice like my health or my sanity or my wellness to make myself look how I'm supposed to look and fit into the group. I'm not willing to be purity tested all the time and to, again, abandon any independent thought or abandon looking at the other side so that I will fit in. We have to be strong enough to say no to that if we actually want a healthier world. Okay? Healthy community is going to make room for people to be different and to have different ideas. And we're going to say, how do we integrate this together? Right? How do we work together with these different ideas? How do we give room for people who are maybe causing harm a chance to learn from the people who are doing it differently, who are getting better results, without shaming them? But just show your work, show your results. You should be becoming a kinder person, right? If you're really doing your work, you should be becoming more compassionate and able to level with people for where they're at. Because again, most people aren't psychopaths. Most people aren't the kind of people we have to just X out of our lives because they're completely like irredeemable. And we're being trained to see people that way. And it's not helpful. Most people are reasonable people if they're spoken to and leveled with reasonably. Okay? Okay. So let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns, things to add. And we'll talk more about this as we go forward. This sucks because I'm currently experiencing having to opt out of hanging out with people I've met in school, and I quickly learned that they're not my kind of crowd, and I'm already a loner, not by choosing, and it's an incredibly tough decision to make, but I'm proud of myself because I'm choosing me. Absolutely, right? You know, I spend a lot of time alone too because, like I said, so many of the groups that are out there, there's too much purity testing, and it's too much. You have to think this way, and you have to advocate this way, and you have to do it this way, and I'm just not into that. I'm not into telling people how to live their lives. And a lot of the time I get called out for not doing that, and I'm not going to. I am never going to stand up here and be like, you are shameful if you believe something different than me. Because even if that's true, I'm not going to change their mind speaking to them like that. They're just going to click away. They're just going to dig deeper into what they're already doing. Compassion is always going to be the thing. Leveling with people is always going to be the thing. And I think this is why, in real community is how we create real change, because we need to have relationships with people. We generally don't change people's thinking through social media posts. People change because they interacted, right? How you interact with people on a day-to-day basis is so much more important than what you put out on social media anyways for creating change. Anyways, it sucks to be a loner. I totally validate that. It does. Because like I say, we're just living in such a polarized world where it's all about how it looks and everyone's inauthentic, it seems, and there's just not a lot of room to be real humans. But the more we do this, the more we become real humans, the more we make it safe, I think, again, we will start to create these cultures and communities that can be real. Even if we just meet here on Instagram or on YouTube and connect in the comments and stuff, right? It's something. All right. So yes, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a real human. How it looks on you is how it looks on you, and you're valid in that. All right? All right. I'll see you when I see you, and until then, you're good enough.